Welcome to Stories Mystics, a place where your mind can rest and your heart can find calm. Here, every story is told with love, comfort, and a touch of mystery, designed to gently guide you into a world of relaxation and peaceful sleep. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to subscribe and become a part of our Stories Mystics family. Together, we'll create a space where every night ends with calmness, comfort, and sweet dreams. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's begin tonight's journey. The sinister guest, Miss Marple's midnight caller. In the quaint village of St. Mary Mead, where secrets whisper through the hedgerows and every shadow hides a story, an uninvited knock echoes at midnight. But this caller brings not just urgency, but death's cold breath. Join Miss Jane Marple as she unravels a web of betrayal, blackmail, and buried fortunes in the sinister guest. What if the most charming visitor is the deadliest? Stay tuned. You won't see the twist coming. Chapter 1. The midnight knock. The village of St. Mary Mead slumbered under a canopy of unrelenting darkness, the kind that swallowed stars and muffled the distant hoot of owls. It was the sort of night where secrets stirred like leaves in a faint breeze, unseen but insistent. Miss Jane Marple, seated in her modest armchair by the flickering hearth, let her knitting needles click in rhythmic harmony with the grandfather clock's solemn ticks. The fire's glow danced across her face, etching shadows that softened the sharp intelligence in her pale blue eyes. She was midway through an intricate cable pattern on a scarf destined for her nephew Raymond, a small indulgence in a life devoted to quiet observation. The clock struck midnight with a resonant chime, each note hanging in the air like a warning. Miss Marple paused, her fingers hovering over the wool. The village was not one for late-night disturbances. Its rhythms were as predictable as the church bells on Sunday mornings. Yet there it came, a sharp, insistent rap at the door, not the polite tap of a neighbor, but the desperate hammer of someone fleeing shadows. Miss Marple set her knitting aside with deliberate care, her movements unhurried despite the quickening of her pulse. She smoothed her cardigan and approached the door, peering through the lace curtain that veiled the small window. The porch light revealed a figure shrouded in a heavy cloak, hood pulled low against the chill. A woman's hand, pale and trembling, rose to knock again, but Miss Marple unlatched the door before it could land. "Come in, my dear," she said softly, her voice a blend of warmth and authority that brooked no hesitation. "You look half frozen. Whatever brings you here at this hour must be urgent indeed." The visitor stumbled across the threshold, her cloak parting to reveal a young woman in her mid-20s, with disheveled auburn hair escaping a hasty bun and eyes wide with a raw edge of fear. She clutched a small reticule to her chest as if it were a shield. "Miss Marple?" "Oh, thank heavens. I didn't know where else to turn. It's my aunt at the manor. There's a man, a guest, I think he's trying to kill her." Miss Marple guided the woman to the fireside chair, her touch gentle but firm. "Sit, child. Breathe. You're safe here. Now let's have some tea to steady your nerves, and you can tell me everything from the beginning. I'm Jane Marple, as you know, and I've a knack for untangling knots, both in yarn and in life." As she bustled to the kitchenette, filling the kettle with water from the tap, Miss Marple's mind raced ahead. The manor in question could only be Hawthorne Manor, perched on the hill overlooking the village green. Lady Beatrice Hawthorne, its imperious mistress, was a widow of considerable means and even greater pride. Rumours had swirled lately of a house party, unusual for the reclusive lady, but Miss Marple had paid them little heed until now. The young woman sank into the chair, her breaths coming in shallow gasps. "I'm Eliza Hawthorne, Lady Beatrice's niece. I live with her. Well, depend on her, really. She's been like a mother since my parents passed. But this guest, Mr. Victor Lang, he arrived 3 days ago, unannounced, with letters of introduction from some distant cousin abroad. At first, he seemed charming, too charming, with his polished accent and stories of exotic travels. But tonight, oh, Miss Marple, tonight I saw something dreadful." The kettle whistled, and Miss Marple poured steaming water over chamomile leaves, the herbal scent filling the room like a calming fog. She handed Eliza a cup, taking her own seat opposite. "Start with tonight, then. What did you see?" Eliza wrapped her fingers around the cup, drawing warmth from it. Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if the walls themselves might betray her. "It was after dinner. Aunt Beatrice retired early, complaining of a headache. She's been unwell lately. Nerves, the doctor says, but I suspect more. Mr. Lang offered to prepare her a special tisane, something from his travels, he claimed, to soothe her. I watched from the corridor as he steeped it in the kitchen. He added something from a vial in his pocket. Clear liquid, no label. When he carried it to her room, I followed quietly. Through the keyhole, I saw him urge her to drink it all. She did, trusting as ever, but his smile, it was predatory, like a fox eyeing a henhouse. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her expression serene but her mind cataloguing details. A vial without a label, poison, or merely a tonic. Lady Beatrice's headaches were no secret. The village chemist had mentioned her recent prescriptions for laudanum, but unannounced guests with foreign remedies. That bore watching. "And what makes you certain it's poison, Eliza? Men like Mr. Lang often carry eccentric habits from afar." Eliza leaned forward, her eyes fervent. "Because I overheard him earlier, arguing with the butler in the library. Hushed voices, but I caught fragments. 'The old bat won't last the week,' he said. 'Once she's gone, the estate is mine by rights.' Rights? What rights? Aunt Beatrice has no heirs but me, and she's rewritten her will recently, excluding distant relatives after some family spat. And then there's the shadows. I've seen figures lurking in the gardens at dusk, as if watching the house. One even followed me here tonight, I swear it." Miss Marple's gaze sharpened. "Followed you? Are you certain?" Eliza nodded vigorously. A crunch of gravel, a silhouette against the hedgerows. I quickened my pace, but it vanished when I reached your lane. "Please, Miss Marple, you must help. The police would laugh. It's all circumstance, no proof. But you, everyone says you see what others miss." The fire crackled, sending sparks up the chimney like fleeting thoughts. Miss Marple set her cup down, her fingers steepled in thought. She recalled similar tales from her youth, a charming interloper in a Cornish villa, whispers of inheritance, a sudden illness that had ended in arsenic and a hangman's noose. But this was St. Mary Mead, where scandals simmered beneath polite surfaces. "Very well, Eliza. I'll look into it discreetly. But you must return home now. Dawn approaches, and absences raise questions. Act as if nothing's amiss. Observe Mr. Lang closely, his habits, his correspondences. And if your aunt worsens, send word immediately." Eliza rose, relief etching her features. "Thank you. I knew coming here was right." She pulled her cloak tight and slipped out into the night, the door clicking shut behind her. Miss Marple lingered by the window, watching Eliza's form melt into the darkness. The village lay still, but unease prickled her skin. She extinguished the lamp and stepped onto the porch, the cool air nipping at her cheeks. The moon had emerged, a sliver casting pale light on the garden path. There, in the soft earth bordering the flower beds, a footprint gleamed, fresh, deep, the tread of a man's boot, not Eliza's dainty slippers. It pointed toward the cottage, then veered off into the underbrush as if the intruder had paused to listen. Her heart quickened, not with fear, but with the thrill of the chase. Who was this watcher? An accomplice to Lang, or another player in this unfolding drama? Miss Marple memorized the print's details, the worn heel, the unusual cleat pattern, before retreating inside. She locked the door firmly, but sleep would not come easily now. Instead, she returned to her knitting, needles clicking faster, her mind weaving threads of suspicion into a tapestry of intrigue. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky in rose and gold, Miss Marple pondered the manor's inhabitants, Lady Beatrice, with her iron will and hidden vulnerabilities, Eliza, loyal but perhaps naive, and Victor Lang, the sinister guest whose arrival disrupted the village's placid facade. What secrets did he carry from abroad? Forged letters, perhaps, or a grudge nursed in foreign soils? She rose to prepare breakfast, slicing bread with precise strokes, her thoughts drifting to the village postmistress, Mrs. Hargreaves, who knew every telegram that passed through St. Mary Mead. A casual visit there might yield clues about Lang's communications, or perhaps the innkeeper, Mr. Potts, had overheard boasts from the stranger over ale. By mid-morning, the village stirred to life. Children scampered to school, shopkeepers unshuttered windows, and the church bell tolled for matins. Miss Marple donned her hat, a sensible tweed affair, and stepped out, basket in hand, ostensibly for errands. But her path led uphill toward Hawthorne Manor, where mist clung to the ivy-clad walls like reluctant ghosts. She paused at the gate, feigning admiration for the rose bushes, when a gardener emerged, clipping shears in hand. "Morning, Miss Marple," he grunted, his weathered face creased in suspicion. "Bit early for visits, ain't it?" "Just passing, Mr. Wilkins. Lovely blooms this year, though I hear there's company up at the house. A Mr. Lang, is it? From overseas?" Wilkins snorted, snipping a wilted bud. "Aye, smooth as silk, that one. Arrived with trunks full of oddities, spices, vials, books in foreign tongues. Keeps to himself mostly, but I caught him poking around the old well last night. Said he was admiring the architecture. Huh, more like hiding something." Miss Marple nodded thoughtfully, filing away the detail. The old well, abandoned, deep, a perfect spot for secrets. How intriguing. And Lady Beatrice, holding up well with guests. "She's peaky, miss. Called the doctor yesterday. But that niece of hers, Eliza, she's the one running ragged, pale as a sheet this morning." Thanking him, Miss Marple continued her walk, her mind buzzing. A doctor's visit, confirmation of illness, and Lang at the well, burying evidence or retrieving it. She circled back to the village, stopping at the chemist's shop. Mr. Hargrove, behind the counter, polished his spectacles. "Miss Marple, needing your usual lavender salts?" "Not today, thank you. Though I wonder, has Lady Beatrice been in for her remedies lately? Headaches, I recall." Hargrove leaned in, voice low. "Aye, but switched to a new tonic. That guest of hers recommended it. Some herbal mix from the continent. I warned her, but she's stubborn." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "Indeed. And this tonic, did Mr. Lang provide it himself?" "Partly. He brought the base. I added the rest. Seemed harmless, but, well, you know how these foreigners are with their potions. Bidding him goodbye, Miss Marple returned home, the pieces shifting in her mental mosaic. Poison in the tisane, a lurker in the night, a suspicious well. It was no mere family tiff. This smelled of calculated malice. As she settled back into her chair, knitting resumed. She allowed herself a small smile. The game was afoot, and in St. Mary Mead, no shadow escaped Jane Marple's watchful gaze. But as the sun climbed higher, a chill lingered. The footprint outside her door, a stark reminder that the sinister guest's reach extended far beyond the manor walls. Chapter 2. Whispers in the manor. The afternoon sun slanted through the canopy of ancient oaks lining the path to Hawthorne Manor, casting dappled patterns that danced like elusive clues on the gravel drive. Miss Jane Marple adjusted her basket, laden with a jar of her homemade elderberry jam, a perfect pretext for an uninvited call. The air carried the faint tang of wood smoke from distant chimneys, mingling with the earthy scent of fallen leaves crunching underfoot. She moved with the unassuming grace of a woman accustomed to blending into the scenery, her sensible shoes making barely a whisper against the stones. Yet her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the manicured lawns for any sign of irregularity. A trampled flower bed, perhaps, or the glint of something discarded in haste. Hawthorne Manor loomed ahead, its Tudor facade a testament to faded grandeur, mullioned windows winking in the light, ivy clawing up weathered brick like fingers grasping at forgotten fortunes. The heavy oak door, studded with iron, swung open at her knock, revealing a maid in starched apron, her face pinched with the strain of recent upheavals. Miss Marple. Her ladyship isn't expecting visitors, but, well, come in. The drawing room's full today. Family and that new gentleman. Miss Marple smiled benignly, stepping into the hall where polished floors gleamed under Persian rugs and portraits of stern ancestors glowered from the walls. Just a quick pop-in, dear. I've brought jam for Lady Beatrice. Heard she's under the weather. Nothing like a spot of sweetness to lift the spirits. The maid nodded, leading her through a corridor lined with antique vases, their fragile beauty a stark contrast to the undercurrents Miss Marple sensed humming in the air. Voices drifted from the drawing room, a murmur of conversation laced with forced laughter and the clink of china. As they entered, the scene unfolded like a stage set for intrigue. Lady Beatrice Hawthorne reclined on a velvet chaise, her silver hair impeccably coiled, but her complexion sallow, eyes shadowed by fatigue. Around her clustered an assortment of relatives, eccentric souls drawn like moss to the flame of her wealth. There was Cousin Reginald, a portly man with a walrus mustache, fiddling with his pocket watch as if time itself were an adversary. Beside him sat Aunt Lavinia, a bird-like woman in lavender silk, her fingers twitching over a fan that snapped open and shut with nervous precision. Eliza hovered nearby, pouring tea with hands that trembled slightly, her gaze flicking toward the door as Miss Marple entered. And then there was the stranger, the sinister guest himself, Mr. Victor Lang, lounging against the mantelpiece with the easy poise of a panther in repose. His dark hair was slicked back, his suit tailored to perfection, and his smile revealed teeth too white, too even for the English countryside. "Ah, another visitor. How delightful," Lady Beatrice intoned, her voice a raspy echo of former command. She gestured weakly. "Jane Marple, isn't it? From the village. Do join us. We're just dissecting the family tree. Always a thorny business." Miss Marple accepted a seat on a plump ottoman, placing her basket on the side table. "Thank you, Lady Beatrice. I shan't stay long. Merely thought you might enjoy this jam, made from berries picked at their peak." Her eyes roamed the room, noting the details. A half-empty teacup beside Lady Beatrice, its contents a murky green hue that spoke of herbal infusions. A scattering of scones on a silver tray, crumbs littering the carpet like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale, and, curiously, a single leather glove abandoned on the windowsill, its cuff stained with a powdery residue that shimmered faintly in the light. Eliza poured her a cup, whispering under the guise of serving, "He's been charming them all morning. Watch him. He's like oil on water, smooth but impossible to grasp." Mr. Lang straightened, his eyes locking onto Miss Marple with a flicker of assessment. "Miss Marple, a pleasure. Victor Lang, at your service. Fresh from Vienna, though I've roots here, distant as they may be." His accent was a melodic lilt, polished to disguise any rough edges. He extended a hand, but Miss Marple busied herself with her tea, offering only a nod. "Vienna? How exotic," she replied mildly. "We don't get many continental visitors in St. Mary Mead. What brings you to our quiet corner?" Lang chuckled, a sound like velvet rubbing against silk. "Family ties, my dear lady. Lady Beatrice and I share a cousin twice removed, or so the letters claim. And business, of course. The world shrinks with every steamer and telegram." He turned to Lady Beatrice, his tone solicitous. "Speaking of which, Beatrice, that investment I mentioned, the Viennese bonds, solid as the Alps, you'd be wise to consider them before the market shifts." Lady Beatrice waved a hand dismissively, though her eyes betrayed a spark of irritation. "Victor, we've discussed this. My fortunes are tied to English soil, not foreign speculations." Her voice faltered, and she pressed a handkerchief to her lips, suppressing a cough that rattled like dry leaves. Cousin Reginald harumphed, his moustache quivering. "Quite right. No need for outsiders meddling in Hawthorne affairs. Why, just last week, I received a letter from that solicitor chap, insisting on some codicil to the will. Forgery, I say. Smells of desperation." The room tensed, glances darting like arrows. Aunt Lavinia's fan snapped shut. "Reginald, really, not in front of guests." But Lang leaned in, his smile unwavering. "A forged letter. How intriguing. In my travels, I've seen such tricks. Ink that fades, seals that don't match. Perhaps I could examine it. My eye for detail has unraveled many a knot." Missy Marple sipped her tea, the brew strong and bitter, masking her keen interest. She observed the interplay, Reginald's bluster hiding vulnerability, Lavinia's fidgeting suggesting complicity, Eliza's silent plea for intervention, and Lang, his offer too eager, his posture too dominant, subtly eroding Lady Beatrice's authority with every word. Reginald produced the letter from his waistcoat pocket, a crumpled sheet with embossed header. "Here then. See for yourself. Claims I'm cut out for some youthful indiscretion. Poppycock." Lang unfolded it smoothly, his fingers tracing the script. The group leaned closer, the air thickening with anticipation. Miss Marple, from her vantage, noted the glove again, its stain resembling chalk or perhaps something more arcane, like residue from a pharmacist's mortar. "Ah," Lang murmured after a moment, his brow furrowing theatrically. "The watermark, it's inconsistent. And the signature, a tremor in the loop of the B that Beatrice's hand never shows." He handed it back. "Forgery, indeed. Likely from that disgruntled nephew in London, always sniffing about for scraps." Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "That boy, I should have known. Reginald, you're safe. No changes to the will on that account. The tension eased with relieved sighs. Scones passed around as chatter resumed. But Miss Marple's mind whirred. Lang's deduction, too swift, too precise. Had he planted the letter himself to ingratiate? Or was it a diversion from graver schemes? As the conversation meandered to village gossip, the vicar's new sermon, the baker's prize-winning loaves, Miss Marple excused herself to the powder room, a ploy to explore. The corridor was dim, lined with bookshelves groaning under leather-bound tomes. She paused at a side table where a stack of correspondence lay haphazardly. Atop it, an envelope addressed to Lang, postmarked Vienna, its seal broken. Glancing about, she slipped it into her handbag, a bold move but necessary. The pilfered clue felt heavy against her side, promising revelations. Returning, she bid farewells amid polite murmurs. Mustn't overstay. Lady Beatrice, do rest. And Mr. Lang, fascinating insights. Perhaps we'll chat more about those bonds. Lang's gaze followed her to the door, a shadow crossing his features. Indeed, Miss Marple. St. Mary Mead holds more surprises than I anticipated. Outside, the sun dipped lower, elongating shadows across the drive. Miss Marple walked briskly, a basket lighter, but her thoughts burdened with fresh enigmas. The forged letter resolved a squabble, yet it amplified Lang's enigma, his charm a veneer over calculated maneuvers, and the glove's residue. The envelope in her bag, clues begging dissection. Back in her cottage, she examined the envelope under lamplight. Inside, a note in elegant script. Proceed as planned. The tonic takes effect soon. Fortune awaits. Unsigned, but the implications chilled her. Lang's true intentions coiled like smoke, threatening to engulf the manor in flames of deceit. As evening fell, Miss Marple knitted by the fire, stitches forming patterns that mirrored her unraveling suspicions. The whispers in the manor had yielded echoes of treachery, and she knew the night would bring more shadows to chase. Chapter 3. Shadows of Deception. Twilight descended upon St. Mary Mead like a velvet curtain drawn by unseen hands, the sky bleeding into hues of indigo and bruised plum. The village lamps flickered to life one by one, their golden pools spilling onto cobblestone streets that wound like veins through the heart of the hamlet. Miss Jane Marple stood by her cottage window, the pilfered envelope from Hawthorne Manor cradled in her palms. The paper was fine, edged with a faint watermark of a crowned eagle, Viennese no doubt, and the ink within carried the sharp scent of intrigue. She adjusted her spectacles, the fire's embers casting a ruddy glow that transformed the room into a sanctum of secrets. With a steady hand, she unfolded the note once more. Proceed as planned. The tonic takes effect soon. Fortune awaits. The words looped in an elegant cursive, but beneath the sophistication lurked a menace, like thorns hidden in a bouquet. Miss Marple traced the script, her mind bridging gaps with the precision of a cartographer mapping uncharted lands. This was no idle correspondence. It hinted at orchestration from afar, a puppeteer pulling strings across continents. She recalled whispers from her travels, scandals in Vienna involving forged identities and vanished heirs. Could Lang be entangled in such webs? The tonic aligned too neatly with Lady Beatrice's ailments, and the promise of fortune echoed the manor's rumoured hidden vaults, stocked with jewels from colonial exploits. Pocketing the note, Miss Marple donned her woolen shawl, its fringes brushing her wrists like whispered warnings. The evening air nipped with autumn's bite as she ventured out, her steps purposeful toward the fox and hounds, the village inn where tongues loosened over pints of ale. The inn squatted at the crossroads, its thatched roof sagging under the weight of years, windows aglow with the promise of camaraderie. She pushed open the door to a rush of warmth, the tang of pipe smoke, the yeasty aroma of fresh brewed stout, and the low rumble of conversations weaving through the timbered beams. Mr. Potts, the innkeeper, wiped a tankard behind the bar, his ruddy cheeks creasing into a grin. "Miss Marple, rare to see you here after dusk. A sherry, perhaps, or is it the shepherd's pie calling?" She settled on a stool, her demeanor that of a benign aunt seeking solace from solitude. "A small sherry, thank you, Mr. Potts, and perhaps a bit of company. The cottage feels empty tonight." As he poured, the room's patrons, a mix of farmers in muddied boots, a travelling salesman with a dog-eared ledger, and the local constable nursing a cider, cast curious glances. Miss Marple steered the talk with subtle artistry, beginning with the weather's whims and drifting toward manor gossip. "Heard there's a foreigner up at Hawthorne's. Quite the stir, I imagine." Potts leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "Aye, that Lang fellow slipped in like a fox in the henhouse. Ordered a crate of continental wines the day he arrived. Fine stuff, but pricey. And get this, he was asking after old maps of the estate, the kind with hidden passages marked. Said it was for historical interest, but I reckon he's sniffing for treasure." A farmer at the end of the bar, his calloused hands cradling a mug, chimed in. "Seen him meself prowling the woods at odd hours. Coincides with them nasty letters Lady Beatrice got. Anonymous threats, scribbled warnings about debts coming due. Postman mentioned them, shook her proper, they did." Miss Marple's pulse quickened, though her expression remained placid. Anonymous threats, another layer to the enigma. She sipped her sherry, the liquid warming her throat like liquid amber. Threats. How dreadful. Any idea from whence they came? The salesman, eavesdropping shamelessly, piped up. "Heard from a mate in London. Lang's name cropped up in a swindle there. Posed as a count, fleeced a widow out of her savings with promises of Viennese investments. Vanished like smoke when the peelers closed in." The pieces slotted together. Blackmail, perhaps, leveraging Lady Beatrice's past indiscretions. Miss Marple feigned mild shock, her questions probing like gentle prods. By the time she bid good night, the inn's lore had painted Lang as a chameleon of deceit, his arrival a harbinger of turmoil, timed with those venomous missives. The night had deepened to inky blackness as she made her way back, stars pricking the sky like distant eyes. But fate, ever the dramatist, intervened. Nearing the manor's wrought iron gates, she caught the flicker of lantern light in the overgrown orchard beyond. Voices carried on the breeze, sharp, accusatory, drawing her into the shadows of an ancient yew tree. There, amid gnarled apple trees heavy with unpicked fruit, stood Eliza and Lang, their forms silhouetted against the glow. "You think I don't see through you?" Eliza's voice cracked like brittle ice, her stance defiant despite the quiver in her shoulders. "Those tonics, I've tested one. Bitter as gall, not the soothing brew you claim. And those letters, your handwriting matches the loops." Lang's laugh slithered through the air, low and mocking. "My dear Eliza, paranoia doesn't suit you. The tonics are harmless, old family recipes. As for letters, coincidence. But let's speak plainly. Your aunt's little secret, the affair with that diplomat years ago, the child given up in secrecy, it's all documented. Pay me what's owed, or the village learns everything, the Hawthorne name tarnished forever. Eliza gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Blackmail, you're despicable. Aunt Beatrice would never. Would she not? Lang stepped closer, his shadow engulfing her. The fortune in those vaults isn't hers alone. Half belongs to my lineage, buried in that illicit branch. Hand over the key, or the scandal erupts. The air thickened with peril, the orchard's branches rustling like conspirators. Miss Marple's mind raced. Intervention was imperative, but subtlety key. She rustled a branch deliberately, feigning a stumble as she emerged into the light. Oh dear, clumsy me, tripped over a root while out for my evening constitutional. Eliza and Mr. Lang. What a coincidence. Lang whirled, his composure fracturing for a split second, a twitch of the jaw, eyes narrowing like slits. Eliza's relief was palpable, her colour returning. Miss Marple, we were just discussing estate matters. Indeed, Lang interjected smoothly, though his tone carried an edge sharper than before. Nothing of import, a minor disagreement over inheritance trivia. Miss Marple dusted imaginary leaves from her shawl, her gaze innocent. Inheritance. How fascinating. I once helped sort a similar muddle for my cousin in Devon. Turned out the disputed deed was misplaced in an old trunk. Perhaps I could assist. I have a friend in London, a solicitor with impeccable discretion. He could verify any claims post-haste. Lang hesitated. His bluff called in this unexpected arena. The offer dangled like bait, a fabricated alibi for delay that masked her intent to expose him. Generous, but unnecessary. These are private affairs. Oh, but privacy breeds errors, Miss Marple pressed gently. Why, just last month, a similar case revealed forged documents, saved a family from ruin. Insist on it, Eliza. I'll telegram him first thing. Eliza nodded vigorously, seizing the lifeline. Yes, please. Mr. Lang, surely you wouldn't object to proper verification. Cornered, Lang's facade cracked further, a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes, fists clenching at his sides. Very well, but mark my words, this delays the inevitable. He turned on his heel, melting into the darkness toward the manor, his footsteps crunching gravel with frustrated force. Eliza exhaled shakily, grasping Miss Marple's arm. You saved me. He was moments from I don't know what. The affair, it's true, but buried deep. How did he know? Miss Marple patted her hand, her voice soothing as chamomile. Secrets have a way of surfacing, my dear. But we've bought time. Return home. Act oblivious. I'll handle the rest. As Eliza departed, Miss Marple lingered in the orchard, the moon now cresting the trees, bathing the scene in silver. Lang's retreat satisfied a momentary unmasking. He'd revealed his hand, blackmail over a scandal, tied to hidden vaults. Yet the poison plot loomed larger, thickening like fog rolling over the meadows, obscuring deeper motives. What lay in those vaults worth murder, and who else pulled strings from the shadows? She retraced her steps homeward, the night's revelations swirling in her thoughts. The inn's tales, the eavesdropped quarrel, each a thread in a tightening noose, but danger whispered closer. A faint snap of twig behind her suggested she wasn't alone. Quickening her pace, Miss Marple clutched her shawl tighter, her resolve hardening like frost on glass. The deception's shadows lengthened, but so did her determination to pierce them. Chapter 4. The Poisoned Chalice. The clock tower in St. Mary Mead struck 11 with a sombre toll that reverberated through the mist-shrouded lanes, each peal a harbinger of unrest. Inside Hawthorne Manor, the grand dining hall gleamed under the chandelier's crystal prisms, casting fractured rainbows across the mahogany table laden with after-dinner cordials. Lady Beatrice Hawthorne raised her goblet, her ornate chalice etched with family crest, in a toast to her assembled kin, her hand steady despite the pallor creeping across her aristocratic features. To enduring legacies, she proclaimed, her voice echoing with a forced vibrancy that masked the weariness etching lines around her eyes. The guests, Reginald with his perpetual scowl, Lavinia fluttering her lace handkerchief, Eliza pale and watchful, and Victor Lang exuding urbane poise, echoed the sentiment, their glasses clinking like brittle promises. No one noticed the faint tremor in the butler's grip as he poured the amber liquid, a rare vintage port laced with something far more insidious. The room hummed with superficial banter, Reginald boasting of his latest stock ventures, Lavinia recounting a scandalous opera in London. Lang, ever the orchestrator, steered the conversation toward exotic elixirs, his anecdotes laced with subtle barbs at Lady Beatrice's conservative tastes. Eliza, seated at her aunt's side, shot furtive glances toward the windows, where curtains billowed like spectres in the draught. Midnight came unannounced, the hall's grandfather clock chiming with inexorable precision. Lady Beatrice sipped deeply from her chalice, savouring the warmth that spread through her veins until it twisted into a searing grip. She gasped, the goblet slipping from her fingers to shatter on the parquet floor, shards scattering like accusations. My chest, she wheezed, clutching at her throat as her face contorted in agony. The room erupted, chairs scraping back, cries of alarm piercing the air. Eliza bolted to her side, cradling her aunt's slumping form. "Aunt Beatrice, someone fetch the doctor, quickly," Reginald bellowed for the servants, while Lavinia fanned herself hysterically, on the verge of swoon. Lang hovered nearby, his expression a masterful blend of concern and detachment, but his eyes, those calculating orbs, flicked toward the spilled port, assessing. The butler, Mr. Graves, a stooped figure with a perpetual stoop from years of deference, wrung his hands in the doorway, his face ashen. Word spread like wildfire through the village, reaching Miss Marple's cottage via a frantic messenger boy pounding at her door. She was already abed, her nightcap askew. But sleep had eluded her. Her thoughts tangled in the web of Lang's deceptions. Throwing on a robe, she hurried to the manor, arriving amid a flurry of activity. The doctor, a portly man with a walrus moustache much like Reginald's, barking orders for emetics and hot compresses. The bedroom where Lady Beatrice lay was a cocoon of opulence turned nightmare, silk drapes framing the four-poster bed, where she thrashed weakly under quilts, her breaths ragged and labored. Sweat beaded her brow, and her skin took on a jaundiced tint under the gas lamps. Eliza paced the rug, twisting a handkerchief into knots. "Miss Marple, thank heavens, it's just as I feared. The poison." She drank from that chalice, and now. Miss Marple approached the bedside with quiet authority, her slippers whispering against the carpet. She took Lady Beatrice's limp hand, noting the clammy chill and the faint scent of almonds clinging to her lips, a telltale whisper of cyanide perhaps, or something akin. There, my lady. Hold on. Doctor, what say you?" The physician mopped his brow with a linen square. "Symptoms point to acute toxicity, nausea, convulsions, respiratory distress. I've administered charcoal, but we must identify the agent. That port. Did anyone else partake?" Eliza shook her head. "Only Aunt Beatrice from the chalice, the rest from the decanter." Miss Marple's gaze sharpened, sweeping the room. The nightstand held a vial of smelling salts, a half-read novel splayed open, and traces of spilled liquid staining the wood. She knelt, inhaling subtly, bitter, acrid, masked by the wine's bouquet. "Eliza, fetch me the chalice remnants from downstairs, and summon the household, everyone, including the staff. We'll convene in the parlour forthwith." As the group assembled in the manor's stately parlour, flames roaring in the marble fireplace to ward off the night's chill, tension crackled like the logs. Miss Marple positioned herself by the hearth, her diminutive frame belying the command she exuded. The suspects formed an uneasy semicircle, Reginald mopping his forehead, Lavinia perched on the edge of a settee, Eliza wringing her hands, Lang leaning against a bookcase with feigned nonchalance, and Graves hovering in the shadows, his uniform impeccable, but his eyes darting like trapped insects. The doctor lingered by the door, ready to dash back upstairs. "Ladies and gentlemen," Miss Marple began, her voice clear as a bell, cutting through the murmurs. "Lady Beatrice clings to life by a thread, victim of a deliberate act. The chalice was tainted not by accident but by design. We must uncover the how and why before it's too late." Reginald blustered, his voice booming. "Preposterous. Who would dare? We're family. Well, mostly." His eyes slid toward Lang, suspicion etched in his jowls. Lavinia tittered nervously. Indeed, though those anonymous threats, could they be linked? Miss Marple nodded, her eyes piercing. "Quite possibly. Mr. Lang, you suggested the toast, insisted on the vintage port from your personal stock. Care to explain?" Lang straightened, his smile a razor-thin veneer. "A gesture of goodwill, nothing more. I brought it from Vienna. Exquisite, meant to celebrate. If tainted, perhaps during storage." "Or during pouring," Miss Marple countered mildly. She turned to Graves. "You handled the chalice last. Tell us, Mr. Graves, how long have you served the Hawthorns?" The butler stiffened, his Adam's apple bobbing. 30 years, miss, loyal through and through." "And yet," she pressed, "your hands trembled tonight. I observed it from the doorway, arrived just in time to see the pour. A drop spilled on the sideboard, fizzing unnaturally. What did you add?" Graves paled, his composure crumbling like dry plaster. "Nothing, I swear." Eliza interjected, her voice quivering with outrage. "Liar, I saw you lingering in the pantry earlier, fiddling with bottles." Miss Marple raised a hand for silence, her questions unfolding like a blooming rose, each petal revealing thorns. "Mr. Lang, your motive intrigues me. Revenge for a betrayed deal? Years ago, Lady Beatrice outmaneuvered your father in a colonial venture. Rubber plantations in Malaya, was it? Left him penniless, driven to ruin. You seek restitution through poison and plunder." Lang's facade faltered, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "Absurd conjecture. My visits are familial." "Hardly," Miss Marple retorted. "Your letters of introduction, forged as the watermark betrays, and the greenhouse, traces of herbal remnants that match the chalice's residue. Foxglove, perhaps, digitalis, subtle, but deadly in excess." The room gasped collectively. Reginald pounded his fist on the armrest. "By Jove, the old well. Wilkins mentioned you poking about, hiding evidence." Lang's eyes blazed, but Miss Marple continued, her tone inexorable. "You coerced Graves, blackmail over his gambling debts, I suspect. The inn's ledgers show loans from a Viennese lender tied to you." Graves collapsed into a chair, head in hands. "It's true. He threatened ruin, made me slip the extract into the chalice, said it was just to sicken her, force a confession of the family vault's location. I didn't know it'd be this bad. Forgive me." Eliza cried out, tears streaming. "You monster, both of you." The doctor nodded grimly. Digitalis explains the heart palpitations. Antidote might still work, if we act now. Lang lunged toward the door, but Reginald barred his path, burly frame unyielding. Not so fast, you cad. In the ensuing scuffle, furniture toppling, Lavinia shrieking, Miss Marple remained serene, her deductions providing cathartic resolution to the immediate peril. Graves's confession unburdened his soul, tears mingling with sweat as the constable, summoned earlier, clapped irons on both men. Lady Beatrice, bolstered by the doctor's ministrations, stabilized upstairs, her colour returning in faint flushes. Yet, as the chaos subsided, the parlour's shadows seemed to deepen. Miss Marple gazed into the fire, embers reflecting in her eyes. Graves's tampering explained the chalice, but the anonymous threats predated Lang's arrival, and the vaults, still unbreached, their secrets whispering of a broader conspiracy. Who else coveted the hidden fortune? A lingering thread tugged at her intuition, promising revelations as dawn approached. The night waned, the manor settling into uneasy quiet. But Miss Marple knew the poison's echo reverberated beyond this confrontation, coiling toward a final unraveling. Chapter 5. Dawn of Revelation. The first blush of dawn crept over the rolling hills of St. Mary Mead, painting the sky in strokes of amber and rose, as if the heavens themselves were exhaling a sigh of relief after the night's turmoil. Dew clung to the grass like scattered diamonds, and the distant call of a rooster pierced the hush, heralding a new day unburdened by shadows. Miss Jane Marple stood at her cottage gate, her breath forming faint clouds in the crisp air, watching as figures approached along the winding lane, silhouettes etched against the awakening light. The constable led the way, his uniform crisp and authoritative, flanking the handcuffed forms of Victor Lang and the remorseful butler, Graves. Behind them trailed the Hawthorne household, Lady Beatrice supported by Eliza's arm, her steps frail but resolute, Reginald puffing with indignation, Lavinia clutching a vial of restorative salts. Miss Marple ushered them into her cosy sitting room, where the fire had been stoked to a welcoming blaze, casting golden flickers across the chintz armchairs and the polished oak table laden with a simple spread of tea and biscuits, fortification for the revelations to come. The room, with its shelves of well-thumbed books and vases of late-blooming asters, exuded an air of unassuming sanctuary, a stark counterpoint to the manor's opulent tensions. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," she said, her voice a gentle thread weaving through the group's unease. The truth, like dawn, illuminates all in its time. They settled in a semicircle around the hearth, Lady Beatrice on the settee, her colour improved from the doctor's antidotes, though her eyes held the haunted gleam of one who had brushed against mortality. Eliza beside her, protective as a sentinel, Reginald in a wing-back chair, his fingers drumming an impatient rhythm on the armrest, Lavinia perched delicately, fan at the ready, and the prisoners under the constable's watchful eye, Lang's urbane mask now cracked with defiance, Graves slumped in defeat. Miss Marple poured tea with deliberate poise, the steam rising like veils lifting from hidden truths. She took her own seat, a modest rocker that creaked softly under her weight, and fixed her gaze on the assembly, her pale blue eyes reflecting the fire's dance. "We've traversed a labyrinth of deceit these past days," she began, her tone measured yet compelling, drawing them in like a storyteller around a campfire. From midnight knocks to poisoned chalices, each twist has led us here, but the heart of this enigma beats not in poison alone, but in a fortune concealed within Hawthorne Manor's very bones, a treasure that has lured predators from afar. Lady Beatrice stirred, her voice a husky whisper. Treasure. The vaults hold heirlooms, yes, jewels from my late husband's expeditions, but nothing extraordinary. Ah, but therein lies the deception, Miss Marple replied, leaning forward, her words unfurling like petals in sunlight. Your husband, Sir Reginald, God rest him, amassed more than trinkets in those colonial jaunts. Whispers from old shipping manifests, gleaned from the village archives, speak of a Raja's ransom, uncut emeralds smuggled from Burma, valued at a king's fortune. He hid them not in vaults, but within the manor's walls, behind false panels in the library, sealed with a cipher only family blood could decode. Reginald's eyes widened, his moustache twitching like a startled caterpillar. Emeralds. Father never breathed a word. How could you know? Miss Marple smiled faintly, producing the pilfered envelope from her apron pocket, the Viennese note that had set her deductions ablaze. This missive, intercepted from Mr. Lang's correspondence, alludes to fortune awaits, but clues abound. The footprints in my garden mud, boots with a Viennese cleat pattern, matching those Mr. Lang wore during his nocturnal prowls. They led not just to eavesdropping, but to reconnaissance, scouting the manor's exterior for structural weaknesses, places where walls might yield to a chisel. Lang sneered, his chains rattling faintly. Conjecture, old woman, footprints prove nothing. Perhaps alone, Miss Marple conceded, her gaze unwavering, but woven with the telegram I deciphered from your effects, a coded message from a Viennese accomplice referencing the emerald vein in the oak heart. The library's paneling is oak, you see, and the cipher, a sequence etched in the family Bible's end papers, birth dates intertwined with astrological symbols. I examined it myself during my visit, under the guise of admiring the bindings. Eliza gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The Bible. Aunt Beatrice reads from it nightly. That's why you lingered there. Precisely, Miss Marple affirmed. And the anonymous threats, not Lang's handiwork, but a prelude orchestrated by his network to soften Lady Beatrice, making her vulnerable to his charm. The ink on those letters matches the residue on the glove I spotted. Prussian blue, imported from continental stationers, traced through the chemist's logs. Lavinia fluttered her fan, her voice a tremulous flutter. But why us? Why now? Miss Marple's expression softened, tinged with the melancholy of human frailty. Greed, my dear, timeless as the tides. Mr. Lang's father was Sir Reginald's partner in those Burmese ventures, betrayed when your uncle claimed the emerald solo, forging documents to erase the partnership. Lang grew up on tales of stolen wealth, nurturing revenge like a hothouse orchid. He infiltrated under false pretenses, using the tonic, digitalis, harvested from the greenhouse foxgloves, to weaken Lady Beatrice, coercing confessions or wills in his favor. Graves, ensnared by debts from Lang's rigged card games in Vienna, became the unwilling instrument. Graves lifted his head, tears carving paths down his weathered cheeks. He promised it was harmless, a sedative to prompt sleep-talking revelations. I never meant harm to her ladyship. Lang's laugh erupted, bitter and jagged. Fool. The emeralds were mine by blood right. This meddlesome spinster thinks she's unraveled it all, but I have, Miss Marple interjected calmly, rising to her feet with the grace of a conductor cueing the finale. She crossed to the window, drawing back the curtains to flood the room with dawn's full glory, sunlight piercing the gloom like arrows of truth. Your ultimate betrayal, the lurker in the orchards, not a minion, but you yourself, shadowing Eliza to silence her suspicions, and the well, not for hiding evidence but for stashing tools, a gemmy bar and maps retrieved under moonlight as the gardener witnessed. The constable nodded approvingly, his grip tightening on Lang's shoulder. Lady Beatrice straightened, a spark reigniting in her eyes. Then it's over. The emeralds. We'll secure them properly. Share if justice demands. Miss Marple shook her head gently. Justice is served in revelation, not retribution. The stones belong to the Hawthorns, but perhaps a portion to charity, washing away old sins. As the group absorbed her words, the room filled with a chorus of reactions. Eliza's grateful embrace, Reginald's blustery thanks, Lavinia's relieved sighs. Lang's defiance crumbled under the weight of exposure, his shoulders sagging as the constable led him and Graves away, the door closing with a finality that echoed through the cottage. Lady Beatrice rose unsteadily, clasping Miss Marple's hands. You saved us, not just from poison, but from the rot within. How can we repay? With vigilance, Miss Marple replied, her smile warm as the sun now streaming in. Human nature is a garden. Weeds creep in unbidden. Tend it well. The visitors departed in a procession down the lane, the manor awaiting their return with renewed peace. Miss Marple lingered at the threshold, watching the sun climb higher, banishing the last vestiges of night. She reflected on the fragility of trust, the way a single sinister guest could unravel a household's tapestry, only for quiet observation to reweave it stronger. Returning to her rocker, she picked up her knitting, needles resuming their rhythmic click. The scarf for Raymond grew longer, each stitch a testament to order restored. Outside, St. Mary Mead stirred fully awake, children laughing on their way to school, the milkman whistling a tune, the church bells pealing in joyous affirmation. No shadows lingered in the lanes, no whispers haunted the hedgerows. The mystery had dissolved like mist under morning's gaze, leaving only the enduring light of truth. Yet in the quiet recesses of her mind, Miss Marple pondered the emerald's gleam, symbols of greed's allure. She knew life's puzzles never truly ended. They merely paused, awaiting the next midnight caller. But for now, peace reigned in her corner of the world, a fragile bloom nurtured by her unyielding watchfulness.